So I look at that sort of thing. So I'm not really a true believer because I don't accept a lot of the stuff. But by the same token, I accept some of it, suggesting that there's been interstellar visitation. So that was kind of where that blog piece came from.
I see, and I do want to talk obviously more about the Roswell case later on, and we have, as our listeners are familiar with, we have different obviously classifications in terms of reports and so forth. We have the abduction phenomena on one end of the spectrum. We have just the close encounters as well. But in your view, what would you define then as a credible sighting, so to speak? Are there a few examples out there, Kevin, that you would put higher up on the scale, so to speak, in terms of credibility?
Of course, Roswell is up there very high. I think of the Washington National sightings. These were the UFO sightings that took place over 2 consecutive weekends in July of 1952 over Washington, D.C., as being very credible because of the number of witnesses. We have instrumentality involved. The objects were seen on radar, and when the radar operators saw them and talked to either airline crews or military interceptor pilots, were able to vector them toward the lights that they saw, that the objects were seen on more than one radar set at more than one location, so it's not a abnormality on that specific radar set, are very credible. I look at those sorts of. I think the Belgium sightings in 1989, 1990, where we have a variety of very high-ranking Belgian military officers and a lot of people in that area seeing UFOs as being very credible as well. So we have those sorts of things going on, and there was a French wave in 1954 where there were an awful lot of sightings of creatures and that sort of thing that strike a chord with me as well. So it's that kind of a worldwide phenomenon, as I'm sure you're well aware of, and sightings that have multiple witnesses, that have some sort of instrumentality involved, that have movie footage. The Great Falls, Montana movie from 1950. In fact, Barry Greenwood did a wonderful article about how long the film was and whether or not the Air Force actually had removed frames from the film before it was released in the public arena, as the photographer had suggested, and was able to demonstrate that yes, a long section of film had been removed, which would have shown the objects much closer in a much more circular saucer shape. So there's lots of those kinds of things out there. What we get lost in is all the noise, the hoaxes, the misidentifications, and when you look at all of that stuff, you say, well, there's nothing to it because we've solved all these cases. But there's always this residue of very good cases, and what we find is that the longer the object is seen and the higher the educational level of the observer, the more likely that case is going to be unidentified, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. So there's a residue of very, very good cases from around the world that fit into that.
And again, it's a bit of a fuzzy area, just as you outline here when it comes to UFOs, because we have another alternative here as well, which is in regards to what is being done here on Earth in terms of alternative propulsion systems, and it is being discussed that some of the sightings might be military testing new crafts and so forth. What's your take on all of that, Kevin?
I think there's no doubt that some UFO sightings are explainable by military aircraft. I've seen a segment of film of the F-117, which was the stealth fighter craft, taken from a specific angle, and it looked all the world like a dome disc on a triangular landing gear about to set down on Earth. And clearly, as you watch more of the film, and of course we're told where the film came from, so we know this. This is a stealth fighter, and I think that sort of thing, the stealth bomber and other military aircraft as they're being developed, may account for that. The SR-71, which is 1950s technology, when you think about it, we still don't know how fast that thing goes because that information is classified. But I do know that that it was fast enough to outrun air-to-air missiles, which means it's going at Mach 3 or 4 at a minimum. And we still don't know what the capabilities of that aircraft were. And there's obviously other military aircraft on the drawing boards of various countries around the world that, seen under the right circumstances, would certainly give rise to UFO sightings.
Absolutely. And in terms of, as you mentioned there, in the SR-71, the Blackbird, it's 1950s, 60s technology. What do you think is in the pipeline today, 2000, going towards 2010 now? What do you think is potentially in development, and what could that look like in terms of if we saw it out in the sky today, Kevin?
There are talks of diamond-shaped craft or triangular-shaped craft being developed as the new fighters, and you take a look at some of the concepts that we see based on what aviation writers have observed and what their speculations are and that sort of thing. Then when we start talking about triangular-shaped craft, we may be talking, at least in part, about seeing some of the advances in our technology, meaning Earth-based technology. And people wouldn't be familiar with that shape for aircraft. I mean, you look at an aircraft, it either has to have wings or a rotor blade, and now we're talking to something that's kind of all molded together, so the whole thing is kind of a lifting body. So that could lead to some UFO sightings. But that certainly doesn't account for the sightings over populated areas, because you don't test the next generation of military aircraft for the most part over populated areas. You don't test them over the countries of foreign countries, because if something goes wrong and the craft falls to the ground there, well, then that country has gained that technology for whatever reason. So you're very careful on where you test it. Given all of that, and we take a look at the UFO sightings that have been made, clearly military aircraft don't account for all of them.
Exactly, and some of these crafts, they have other features that potentially put them out of the human development area, so to speak. We can talk about glowing, everything from glowing spheres to those who seem to hover silently, and even the size of the crafts play into this as well.
Or their ability to make nearly right angle turns without killing the occupants inside. And so the maneuverability takes it outside the realm of what our current technology, and by that I mean 2009, 2010 technology, certainly takes it outside the capability of our technologies.
Absolutely, and these are some of the things that we obviously want to discuss here as well a little bit later. Just as a tidbit here, I would like to ask you, since you're involved in this, the Norway blue spiral that came and popped up here a few days ago. It's claimed that it was a failed Russian missile test and so forth. Have you looked into anything of this, Kevin? And if so, what's your take on all of this?
I have looked at it a little bit. In fact, there's a video bar on my blog, and I don't really control what shows up on the video bar other than it's UFO related. And so I've noticed that a couple of times footage from that has shown up on the video bar. So I've looked at the footage, and I've seen some of the debates in the various news groups around the world, as a matter of fact. Don Ledger from Canada, for example, is very vocal on this. And I think one or two people from New Zealand weighed in on it. So the number of people around it. It seems to be a failed rocket test. I think the rational end of the UFO believers seem to accept the explanation that it's a failed Russian test. And I have no reason to doubt that solution for that particular sighting. There was also on the internet not long ago a bolide that fell near Trinidad, Colorado, that was caught on a couple of police car video cameras, which is just absolutely fascinating, because you see the streak of light, and then the thing explodes in a big flash of light, and it just lights everything up like daylight and fades out immediately. And that showed up, but it's pretty clear that was a bolide as well, because you can see it coming in, and it probably struck the ground somewhere in Utah, which would be west of Trinidad, Colorado.
There you go. And what would you say in terms of, I mean, again, there's so many videos out